Hey guys, I thought I'd do a quick video just talking about a bug that we've just fixed in SleepHQ. We had a few reports come in about a time zone bug that people were uploading their data and they were ending up with it showing in the wrong times. They were seeing, sometimes I was seeing some sessions that got duplicated, it looked like they were sleeping twice in the day when they shouldn't have been, and other times the time was just wrong, it was just showing up as the wrong time in the app. So I thought I'd just talk to you guys quickly about what happened there and how we ended up having to fix it, because it's tricky. Time zones on computers are hard. If you've ever written software that deals with times and time zones, people in multiple users, then you'll know that it's not the easiest thing in the world to deal with. And really what it comes down to is, like, 10 PM for me is not 10 PM for anyone else necessarily if you're in a different part of the world. So the tricky thing for us at SleepHQ is CPAP machines don't really store their session times in a way that's particularly usable for us. So normally with computers, when you're building, say, like a web application like SleepHQ, you would store your time zones in what we call UTC time. So it's a universal timestamp that basically is, so I'm in Melbourne, I'm in +10 at the moment is my timestamp, but universal time is 0. So it's a 0 offset and it's always consistent. So what we do with computers normally is we would store a Unix timestamp, which is, it's the number of seconds since the 1st of January 1970. So, and that counter just keeps on going 1 second, every single second, regardless of where you are in the world, regardless of daylight savings time or anything else like that. It just counts up 1 second per second, and it's been doing that ever since. So it's at, 16 million or something now is roughly the number of seconds. So what you do with a computer is you just store that as an integer, as a number. And it is just the number of seconds since 1st of January 1970 that this particular thing happens. And then what you've got is you've got an absolute point in time. So that might be, the 10 PM on the 13th of March 2022, and that's the number of seconds from 1st of Jan 1970 to this point in time. Now when I come to display that to a user, I need to convert that into your time zone. So if you live in America, I'm going to do, say, -7 hours of that because you're in a -7 time zone. If I'm in Melbourne, Australia, I'm going to add 10 hours to that because I'm in +10 time zone. And then that's the time that you're going to display to the user, because that's then relative to where they live. But it gets tricky for us because time zones stored on CPAP machines don't care about where you live, they don't care about time zones, they just get stored as a date and a time. So it just says the 13th of January, 10 PM. There's no Unix timestamp associated with that. Now, the reason why it's tricky is because we need to take that timestamp that comes off your CPAP machine and then convert it into a Unix timestamp. And to do that, we need to know what time zone you live in, because 10 PM for you is not the same as 10 PM for me. So we need to know what time zone you're in to know when your 10 PM is, when we first create that Unix timestamp. We also have an additional sort of complication though with daylight savings, because 10 PM for you changes when daylight, if you're in an area that has daylight savings, then that absolute point in time of 10 PM gets shifted by an hour on that particular date. And the date of daylight savings changing over is different in different places around the world. So in order for us to work out what that Unix timestamp is when your CPAP session actually started, we need to know what time zone you're in, and we need to know the date that the thing actually happened, so that we can work out, was it daylight savings time or wasn't it? We then also need to offset it against the server that's processing the data. So our server sits in UTC time, which is where it should be. So we've got a 0 offset on the server. So we need to make sure that everything is lined up so that when we pass that time back out to you at the other end, because when we're presenting times, we have to present them as a Unix timestamp. So there's no other way really for us to present times effectively on the internet apart from to convert them into this UTC timestamp format. So in order to do that, we go through this big conversion process, and we weren't doing it correctly. We weren't correctly allowing for daylight savings time. Basically what we were doing is we were looking at, say, I'm in Melbourne right now, I'm on +10 time, but 3 weeks ago I was on +11 because it was daylight savings here. And what we were doing was, when we were analysing my data, we would go, hey, Adam's in a +10 time zone, let's subtract 10 hours off all of his timestamps and do that for everything. The issue was though that then my time zone changes when daylight savings happens. So what we have to do to fix that is we have to look at what time zone are you in right now. I'm in +10, and what time zone were you in when this event happened. So if I'm uploading data from 3 weeks ago, at that point I was in a +10 time zone, sorry, +11 time zone. Right now I'm in a +10 time zone. So we need to correct the offset depending on what you're in now and what you were at the point in time when the thing actually happened. So anyway, I've just been down a big deep rabbit hole of time zones and the way that they get stored in CPAP machines and how we can convert them effectively into formats that we can present reliably on the internet, because that's really the crux of the issue, was that we need to be able to take timestamps from the way they're formatted on a CPAP machine and then reliably present them on a website so that they don't change. Regardless of whether daylight savings is changing or not, we need to be able to allow for that and always show the same time. So that's what I've been working on for the last few days. We've just pushed up the fix for it. We've still got a few accounts that have some data in there, some duplicate sessions and stuff, so we're currently going back through and just correcting all of that data. So if you've got any incorrect data in your account, it should just get filtered out over the next few days. If you're still seeing it a week from now, shoot me an email and we can double check. But hopefully now we've got this bug fixed once and for all, so we're now correctly applying all these offsets and making sure that we're doing the right thing. Just while we're talking about time zones, one last thing to note is that because we do store things as a universal timestamp, when you're viewing your own data, it should all work fine and everything will be correct. If you send a share link to someone who lives in a different time zone to you, or you add them to your account, then when they view your data, they're going to see your time. So if you live in the US and you send a share link to me, I live in Australia, if you go to bed at 10 PM, I'm going to see that come up as, I think it's about 1 PM in the afternoon or midday or something, once you do the offsets. So just be aware of that. One feature that we might add in the future is when you're viewing data from someone who lives in a different time zone to you, we'll give you an option to automatically adjust for that offset, and then so that way then we'll then correct all of those timestamps back into the person who's actually viewing the data, as opposed to the person who recorded the data, which is what we do right now. So it'll be correct for the people who are viewing their own data. It's really only if you're viewing data that belongs to someone who lives in a different time zone to you. And that sort of makes sense, because someone who lives in the US is sleeping in the middle of my afternoon, so I should see that recorded. I should see that come up as, say, 2 PM when I look at their sleep data. However, it's not necessarily super intuitive like that. It sort of feels like maybe you should be able to say, yeah, but they went to bed at 10 PM their time. That's what I want to see when I look at it in the application. So, like I said, we may well roll that out as a feature at some point in the future. It's just another little time zone rabbit hole for us to go down and try and fix. So anyway, that's kind of just, for anyone who's interested, that's the backstory of the bug that we've just been working on, and hopefully the fix that everyone should see in their accounts going forward. All right, thanks guys.